being here. Austin, I've been here a year, and Austin has been so generous and kind to me that I feel like I have read a lot. And so I keep reading newer and newer work. And so if any of you keep coming, you will maybe observe me becoming a worse and worse poet. And for this, I apologize. But thank you for being here. And Tyler, thank you to you for being you in all your Thai godness. You make a big difference around here. So I'm going to read a handful of really new poems and then a handful of really new poems. I want to save this whale, the one right in front of me, on email, a chain message forwarded by my mother on the first day of this new year. She's tangled in nets and lines, and there's only one way to get her out, she tells us with her bathtub-sized eyes, one at a time, because we have to swim around to see. Air rights. One way to think of it is I require absent, and you are lifelong, a room just left. Except you bloom not empty half-light, but a stand of trees at the edge of the meadow where my life leaks out. Static is the soundtrack of the cabbie's dream, but oh, how we love our troubadours, sad acoustic boys and girls, sunshine stuck in their throats. Some days it takes all my concentration not to pick the lettuce that lives down the street. Then I wake with tendrils between my fingers, feigning innocence on the one hand, aping grief on the other. I would eat the lily from under the frog, drink the river between each strider's wake. It's my way of feeling productive, of not too terribly envying the swan, still as a figurine on her cloud mirror, until the trees go back to normal, which is a kind of sleep, instead of clawing magnificent at the sky. Questions are an attribute of God. Light a steeple bright enough, and blind the bats will come, stitching white against the torn black cloth of sky. All these years, and still no one knows what draws the moths and their buzzing relations with tired jaws, or at least no one's told me. We know enough to stop and look up, but not one thing more. They look like manta rays riding moony ocean waves, like lumens let loose from a drunken ray gun. I'm not necessarily convinced by ideas that have been around so long it seems their time must have come. But coyotes do fill the night with tricks when they throw their voices from bedside lamp to rising sun. And reincarnation is one explanation for some kinds of otherwise inexplicable love. Forever my horse has thought he is descended from unicorns. He tells me over and over, with the one brown and one blue lake of his eyes, and doesn't bat a lash when I tell him unicorns only ever inhabited brutally the northernmost seas. He just chomps his bit a little and stamps any nearby puddle and refuses to blink as if to say, yeah, well, what's all that about you and whales and the scaled digits of your precious thumbs? On the 2 times life-size statue of the saint beneath the steeple beneath the moon, the most realistic way to depict the eyes is the inverse of true. Pupils a bolt of stone, and all around them, nothing but absence. Built for it. Maybe age or some other slow cooling of the limbs one day will will me from the water, from this desire to plunge my body in. I tried hot yoga once, winks the fireman, on the park bench overlooking the sea. To be honest, he says, it felt like wearing full gear in a house fire. You should try Bikram, says the mother in workout clothes, taking a sticker for her kid. Whose motives are ever pure? Let's face it, tennis is mostly about the outfits, even if it is what taught me how to go for the other girl's jugular that I should, even with her daddy watching. Want rings out in the house of the self, and in the self must live. It's Friday morning, and I know what I'm doing here, but what's everybody else's excuse? There's everything and nothing to want from the sea who does not answer. Complete refusal transforms itself into a kind of total acceptance. At least so it seems, because one way or another our voices travel away from us, and this is a relief. Code red, the children scream every time they spy a crab. Dozens of men are killed, says the paper, and their wives are kept for single soldiers of the day's conquering. Killed, we say, if a war zone. Kept, we say, if a woman. Love, love, we say, when the score is 0. Irrelevant, says the sea, into which everything we throw away ends up. Words. So I'm going to follow that cheerful little number with some even less cheerful stuff. But I did offer a unicorn, which was a surprise to me when it came. I read a few of these poems this summer at the wonderful Sunchild reading series. And so if you need to think about something else, I want to offer you something else in addition to the unicorn. And Sam, this is especially for you. I have a son, and he calls the anus the bum mouth.
Genius.
Yeah. So this is a linked group of poems, kind of all in one voice, circling around a kind of set of concerns with certain recurrent figures that show up, unnamed friends, things that bombard us from the interwebs, and a few other kind of things that just sort of recur. I'll read a handful of these. The resemblance of the enzymes of grasses to those of whales is a family resemblance. This world whistle, there's nothing for it, there's no apologizing, what could we possibly say? Cumulus sails and their endless blue ocean are a thin skin when viewed from space. Back home, astronauts turn to drink or religion to shield the eyes, to cloud the vision. Something was irreparable in the darkness or the largeness or the smallness they saw. Whistle, this morning I watched 2 elephants dance the boogie-woogie. One added grace notes with its trunk, nodding its head in cool time. The other, half in and half out of the frame, shook its booty just like my friend, the best singer you'll ever, never hear, because for her, the stage turned into a kind of prison, just like the refuge, maybe, staffed by good people who wondered how the elephants would respond to the piano's rollicking tune, or who knew how and couldn't wait to watch them move. This morning whistle, these last few days have been kissed with crisp and feel loving in a benevolent air kind of way. It's spring and birds are busy and there's a mulberry tree popping berries enough for all, and the city sings in distant sirens and steady traffic thrum. Soon the sun will be too terribly strong again, and the drought we're presently forgetting will press back into view against the bleached rocks that line the reservoir down which the water continues to crawl. I live somewhere different now, whistle, somewhere I do and do not belong. This winter up north, the far north, reached too far south. Here, more than 300 million trees have died since our current thirst began. It's impossible not to feel thirsty, whistle, under a sky like this. When a dead tree falls over, a young new tree eventually will grow back in its place. A man named Burl, who works at the Forestry Service, reminds us, trying to be encouraging. I don't mean to be discouraging, whistle. It's beautiful here. It's just that fear has us in its thrall. Things are different, or they're just like they've always been. We're not sure, and we're not sure which is worse. We love it when animals act like us. I mean, just look at those elephants dancing. We see it as a kind of evidence that maybe it's better for them to be nothing like us at all. They stop everything to mourn their dead. When choosing a direction, they engage in extensive debate. Rage follows cause. Whistle, they know when even a distant friend falls. Space race. A city being built up, Whistle, looks a lot like a city being torn down. Scaffolding and buckets, brick-sewn seams, a certain kind of emptiness. I'm planting a garden of all native species, but even it begins to feel like a zoo, a private parade of favored specimens. The rare pomegranate looks like the common carnation. Purple martins in fancy houses live with parasitic sparrows in their midst. It's the cost of doing business, because chasing them away takes all day. The days, Whistle, as someday you'll no doubt find out, are often tedious, circular corridors punctuated by doors opening onto small rushes of pleasure or pain, but in the end, endless feeling, which is both a comfort and a source of despair, and either way an illusion we can't help but believe and know to be false at the very same time. So it's hard, Whistle, to keep the important questions in mind. A near miss reminds us, pulses drumming in our ears, tingling in every finger. What am I doing with my one little chance to be alive? My friend, now distant, sings through the car stereo I've put on because I miss her. Whistle, today they say the ocean will be empty in a future not too distant to imagine. There is a balancing act you will one day be introduced to and then never be free to unlearn, between the concerns of the day and the concerns of what we call the bigger picture. A friend of my friend who was paralyzed in a crash devotes herself to the cause of raising awareness about the small, hard, or even semi-soft objects of daily use that can become deadly projectiles under the right conditions. And I have no doubt she is correct. She is in fact expert. She is all the proof she needs. But most of us can't bring ourselves to batten down every small thing to some not even invented yet small hatch, like an astronaut patiently securing his rounded utensils in the womb of a capsule hurtling through space. We have no choice but to pick and choose, Whistle. Yet this same equation is what will open our eyes to an empty ocean in some 50 years, maybe sooner, according to today's news we can't bear to read. Instead, we take quizzes about our personalities and our character traits, such as which marine animal are you? A simple lesson on the buried spirit. This morning, Whistle, I overheard a man say on what could only be some kind of an audition, if you ask me, do I believe in a power? Yes, but it's not some old guy with his hand on the joystick, and if you want to call that God, sure. The woman he was talking to nodded and didn't say anything, and one day, Whistle, we will ask you what you believe, but this is a dirty trick, something else we're trying on lately, a different kind of coat than our parents wore. Because really, we know all any of us has to believe in is what we've been taught by each other or by experience. But the secret is, Whistle, if you have too much of your own experience of God, you're likely to be cast out by other people. Or maybe what I mean is embraced by the wrong kind of people, people who will not ask you what you believe. On a hilltop in Galilee, a red heifer is guarded around the clock, and her burnt orange coat every day is parsed with a fine-toothed comb and several pairs of specially sanctified eyes scouring the plains, the hills and valleys of her body for a telltale white hair. They search and search for what will disappoint them, for what they hope desperately never to find. Among my peers, Whistle, there are people, mostly parents, who've decided to believe that the new generation, the one they're giving birth to, will arrive especially equipped to save us from the trouble we're in. And though I sympathize, Whistle, this seems the dirtiest trick. We've lost the eyes of God, so don't look now, but we're looking at you. I used to read mention of the poem in a poem as a self-aggrandizing gesture, but now I feel it as an admission of guilt. Every butterfly in this conservatory I escaped to was raised by hand to die on the altar of our enjoyment, or each lived a charmed and protected life in these hallowed halls, a perfect melting pot, an ideal microcosm under a protective dome, as on the moon or Mars or wherever we may one day soon be heading. Today I stopped reading, Whistle, but I lingered to look at a picture of a full-grown Siberian tiger, 375 pounds, bowing its head and placing the enormous pink palm of its paw to the tiny pink palm of a toddler pressed to a pane of zoo glass. innocence to innocence, a benediction, forgiveness, a warning. It bowed its head and pressed its paw and rubbed its cheek against the glass in front of the little girl's face before turning away, an animal in some places believed to be son of the same mother as man, in some places worshipped as a god, an animal smart enough to hunt us not for meat but for vengeance, Whistle, if given the chance. Despair fire. Today I sat in a crowded room, Whistle, and listened to children accompany each other to the songs of their parents' youth. We wept and we cheered, and it was excruciating and it was beautiful. Nothing is uglier than a parent's anger at her child. Nothing floods a person quite like the terrible tenderness, the desperate hope that she be spared. Later, Whistle, my mouth was full of chocolate when I cried out alone in the car upon hearing the hostage's father explain that for all the years of his son's captivity, he lived according to the captor's time, waking, eating, sighing, sleeping, out of sync with everyone around him as a way to stay connected. Or maybe it was a form of distraction, the way my friend teaches terrified children to put their ears in the water by getting them to say aloha and other silly-sounding Hawaiian words. Or maybe the Hawaiian words are to distract him during the endless hours in the pale, lifeless pool. Or maybe they remind him of the blue sea day he knew he wanted to devote his life to water, which he does, but not in the way he imagined. The father's son has come back, Whistle, but not in the way he imagined. Guilty was the terrible verdict reached in the trial held by stolen candlelight in a court of starvation and deprivation over a series of Auschwitz nights. God is guilty as charged, they said. Then let us pray. Every pastoral is an elegy. Once I flipped, Whistle, over the front of a horse I was riding. He balked, pulled up, and above his dappled gray shoulder I sailed to the sawdust floor, belly up and tucked neatly beneath his raised, razored hooves. Whistle, he stopped, miraculous in mid-air, in mid-step, in microseconds, with great force of will and greater strain of muscle. He refused something physics ordained, something for which he could bear no blame. Like a god, he interrupted cruel fate on my behalf. Later, from his back, I spied in his turnout a perfect woven cup, a swallow's nest of hair plucked from mane or tail. Our bodies, Whistle, sometimes are the material of essential matters we can't foresee. If an alien in a galaxy 65 million light years away is looking at us through a telescope right now, it is looking at dinosaurs, says an astronomer on the radio on the anniversary of a famous stargazer's death. It's simple, he says. The reason we find no evidence of life forms like us is they too quickly destroy their planets. Which animals do you think keep us company, my friend asks, in past and future knowing? Maybe whales, I say, maybe elephants, but we've already talked too much about sadness today, and birds can know only the present tense of their flying, we agree, and agree to leave it there. Pigeons scour the sidewalk, grackles scour the air. Relief after rainstorms. Whistle, some days even business as usual feels rare. If you watch to the end, the amateur videographer says in a post below the movie he took of himself saving a fawn stuck in a neighborhood fence, it almost looks like the mother is thanking us. I saw it happen, Whistle, what the billboards describe. I saw it begin, a noiseless slipping of the face beneath the surface, the silence of going under. And in this case, by chance or by vigilance, the awful invisibility was visible enough and able to be reversed by swift leap and wild grasp. And then he was in my arms again, Whistle, like a newborn gasping. And because he is mine, he is mine, he is mine. Because on that day he did not die. Because my fear from him I tried to hide. Because in the womb all sound is a kind of music, I started singing. Thank you.